everybody, Matt here from Matt's Movies, Music and More, welcoming you to this week's episode of What Did You Think? And as always, my special guest Andrew.
Well, hello.
Okay, as the Twister Spinner in the last episode landed on drama, it picked today the 2017 movie 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
There's a catchy title.
Yeah. I thought it was like something else when I heard about that. But the movie is directed by Martin McDonagh, and it stars a great ensemble cast, but I'm going to really just mention the three main actors in this film. Starting with Coen brothers' favourite Francis McDormand, Woody Harrelson, and the ever-reliable Sam Rockwell. So, 3 Billboards.
In the town of Ebbing, Missouri, we follow Mildred Hayes, Francis McDormand, whose teenage daughter Angela was horribly raped and killed sometime prior to this, and based on what she feels has been a lack of action on the part of the police, she hires the local advertising company to put up 3 specific messages on the billboards just outside town, which are decayed and decrepit and nobody should care about anyway, but it is a very clear message to the police: raped while killed, still no arrests, how come Chief Willoughby? And from there we get a lot of hostile or awkward reaction from the populace, including the Chief Willoughby himself, who turns out to be sympathetic, but he feels there's not much that can be done to solve this murder case, and his subordinate officer Dixon, played by Sam Rockwell, whilst Woody Harrelson is Chief Willoughby, but Dixon is far more of a racist, dumb block of wood. And the story slowly but surely spirals from there. The hatred, the resentment, the awkward feeling, and long buried anger of, well, especially Mildred Hayes, but of the populace as a whole. And will we find out who killed her daughter?
I forgot to start with the video disclaimer actually, which is, had you seen this movie before it came up on the spinner, and if so, when was the last time?
It came out in the January of this year that we're recording, in time for the Oscars, because it was an Oscar contender at the time. So given that and the black humour that the director-writer is known for, I was always going to be interested in this.
Yeah, because he did that movie, didn't he? He did In Bruges and 7 Psychopaths, if I recall.
7 Psychopaths I've seen, and I remember enjoying that, so I always felt, yes, I'm going to put this on my list of things to see. So I did see it in January 2018 when it came out. Not only that, but I was able to persuade 3 or 4 of my work colleagues who were similarly interested in this, because this was a hot favourite to win the Oscars at the time. So not only did I see it, I saw it with friends. So right off the bat, I am going to associate this movie with happy, sociable memories.
And from what I recall, this movie, I can't remember how many Oscars it was nominated for, do you know?
Not off the top of my head, I'm sorry to say.
One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think, because, yeah. Finding out on the internet, thank goodness we got an internet with us.
Do pardon our little jump cut you may have just experienced.
Yes. It was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, 2 of which were in the same category, because I believe Woody Harrelson and Sam Rockwell were both nominated for Best Supporting Actor, in which Sam Rockwell won.
He won, I remember that.
Yeah, and Frances McDormand won for Best Actress, and the movie won for Best Picture.
I believe The Shape of Water won Best Bit Picture, and the director Guillermo del Toro got Best Director. I think ultimately when it came to the Oscars this year, The Shape of Water won, but Three Billboards did not shame itself.
Do you think that it's a weird one, really, because it kind of feels like it's believable that this could have been based on a true story?
I feel more like it's got farce, but darkly comic farce written all over it. I think it's more, it was relatable and it won awards and acclaim because of the climate, social political climate we live in today. The Me Too movement I'm thinking specifically of here, and reactions towards that. I feel like that's what audiences could relate to, and that's why Francis McDormand capitalised on her Best Actress win with the speech.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, which is, do you think that she was right to do that?
We could go into a whole argument about the wider concerns like Harvey Weinstein, but I feel it was inevitable, let's put it like that. Inevitable in a broader sense, but also in that specific, the Oscars were going to be a platform for actors to get up and say, time for change.
Yeah. But
most people feel like that's all the Oscars are these days, but...
Yeah, because it just seems that with the Oscars, it doesn't seem to be aimed at the viewing public. It seems to be the critics are really the ones that have the say-so on this.
Artistically worthy movies, Matt.
Yes, because when you look at this movie, you just think, it doesn't sound like the sort of movie that an average film goer would go and see, but someone like you would find it interesting, and like me, because of the people involved and to some extent the Oscar buzz, because obviously the time of year it was released in England, the Oscar buzz was around, and that happened, I believe, in the early 2000s when the Paul Haggis movie Crash came out. It was released around the same sort of time in the UK and the US, that it was constantly touted for Oscar success, which it finally got. But people have looked back on that movie and have said, really, that movie won Oscars? Because apparently it's not done very well in the years subsequently.
It's a funny thing about the difference between Oscar winners and movies that you remember as winning the Oscars, but they technically didn't, but you unconsciously feel, well, it should have won because it was a better movie.
Mm. But you think Three Billboards deserved every award it got?
With the best actress, best actor, supporting actor, and I believe best script, if we can check or confirm or deny that.
Yeah, it won the best screenplay.
Absolutely, yes. To go through it point by point, perhaps, best actress, Francis McDormand convinces you as this woman full of righteous fury and anger, straight talking, just calls people cowards or linked that you're a priest, you object to my plans, and yet you belong to a church that's full of paedophiles. She's not afraid to speak the truth, but yet she's also sort of goes on a journey to ultimately learn that the best warrior keeps their anger contained or reserved. I kind of mangled that, but it's it's what she learns about anger only besets greater anger. She convinces you as this woman that's full of fury, and yet at the same time is suffering because of what happened to her daughter. So there's that. And Sam Rockwell is oddly, I don't want to say sympathetic because he's a racist, and yet he does sort of go on this journey that the script demands of him, but you kind of root for him by the end, or you feel more sympathetic to his plight. And the screenplay is darkly comic and complex at the same time. It does go for a range of subjects like racism that it sets up, but it never quite fully falls back on or resolves itself. It might reach for a little too much at once, but it's got all these characters and all these threads. It keeps you engaged.
It's an interesting movie, and the casting is really good as well. I mean, I noticed that you've got this great ensemble cast of people that work really well in the film.
I should mention one. I'm sorry to cut you off, but two moments with Sam Rockwell spring to mind. First is the tracking shot as he decides he's had enough of the advertising company, so just straight up goes to them and beats the crap out of them and destroys the building and walks out again. We just follow that straight, and he just walks straight back to the police station. That was
pretty funny.
That was funny. Maybe not as funny as the moment when we've heard that Chief Willoughby has killed himself and everybody's upset and horrified and traumatised, except for Sam Rockwell, who's happily listening to ABBA on his headphones, and he's bopping along like an idiot, and everyone comes in and's tearful that, have I missed something?
Yeah. But the cast is great in this movie. I mean, you've got some great actors involved, not just the three that we've mentioned, but you've obviously got people like Abby Cornish, and you've got the guy whose name I always forget. He's I think he's a foreign name, like Zelko Ivanek, who's been in lots of American movies. He was in Seven Psychopaths as well, along with Woody Harrelson, ironically. And you've got John Hawkes, who's always great, and Caleb Landry Jones as well, who is a guy that is in Get Out and a few other new recent films, and of course Peter Dinklage.
Yeah, Peter Dinklage was quite memorable as the slightly pervy car dealership salesman who effectively blackmails Francis McDormand into saying, "I know you bombed the police station, but I won't tell if you take me on a date with you, please." And he does serve a narrative purpose to finally call her out on, well, I know I'm just a midget and you didn't want to go on a date with me in the first place, but who are you, the horrible woman with the billboards who makes everyone miserable and sets fire to police buildings? I didn't have to help you today, and I was looking up your skirt the whole time.
It's a good movie. I liked it. Did you like it?
It's quite high up on my favourites of the year so far. It's an almost perfect triumph of both the script, the nuance. It's both darkly comic and it's got something angry and furious to say about things like the nature of revenge and anger and small town petty-minded attitudes towards things like this, and not just the script but the performances also anchor this. Everyone's committed to this.
It's like the one thing that constantly comes to mind in this movie for me is there's two bits I want to bring points up on, which is, who are you really supposed to root for in this film? Because the Francis McDormand character isn't exactly a likeable goody-goody. She's kind of... If she was a social media person and she was on Twitter or Facebook, people would be saying, giving her death threats because of what she speaks her mind.
People would hate her left, right and centre, yeah. She'd be, well, Trump. If I can take easy pot shots like that, but...
Yeah, she just says what she thinks and she doesn't care who she hurts in the process.
Yeah.
But you can see that she obviously come out of an abusive relationship with her ex, played by John Hawkes. Which
in itself is almost ambiguous, because the daughter says at one point, we see her before she went off, and Francis McDormand says, "I hope you get killed or raped," which is horribly ironic. But she talks about how your dad beat up on me, and the girl says, "We've only got your word for that." Do we take that literally, or that is the thing? It's a bit ambiguous. And you got that scene as well with John Hawkes' girlfriend, haven't you, where he's dating a girl who's probably in her early 20s, and she is dumb as hell. Dumb as a brick. Yeah. She just constantly gets in the wrong situation or the wrong wording or whatever. I'm probably misremembering, but Francis McDormand hears that she's been reading a book on equations or something and can't quite believe this, and goes over because the girlfriend is they go, so you're reading a book about equations, I hear. Oh no, equestrian. Because it turns out the girlfriend works at the pony centre for disabled children or something like that.
Yeah. But one thing I did want to say about this before we wrap this up is how good Sam Rockwell is.
Yeah, but when he won that award, I felt, yes, that is deserved.
But at the same time, hasn't he played this role before with his performance as Wild Bill in The Green Mile?
And now that you mention it, I can sort of see where you draw that parallel comparison. Yes.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously in that he's a complete nut, whereas in this one he's kind of it's hard to describe, but I suppose he's kind of like, he takes his job seriously, but everyone in the community thinks he's a bit of a joke because of his attitude and the fact that he lives at home with his mother.
He lives at home with his mother.
And his mother is very controlling. I think she's played by the woman that is the mother of Napoleon Dynamite, if I recall. It looks like her. Whether or not I'm wrong, I don't know, but it does look like her. But yeah, she's very controlling. She's like, oh, don't listen to what the town folks say and whatever like that. And he's constantly bitching at her all the time. He's got his medication he's on, I think, as well, hasn't he? And then he's got his headphones to relax him, so it's his music that relaxes him.
And he spends his time at his police desk, his job, with his feet up reading comics.
I think regarding who to root for, as we said earlier, who is the person to root for, I kind of think that the Woody Harrelson character is the one that I sort of felt rooting for, because he just doesn't seem to have really done anything wrong.
Everyone has a sympathetic, unsympathetic duality, which does make this a bit of a, like you say, it's hard to, there are no clear villains or heroes in this to root for. Francis McDormand is angry, but she is a woman who's lost her child. Sam Rockwell is a racist, but he's trying to do his job. Woody Harrelson's character is the most sympathetic one by a country mile, because he says he has tried everything humanly possible to catch the killer and he can't. And he's dying, he's about to die of pancreatic cancer or something like that, which Francis McDormand's character knows all too well, and she said, well, if I did it after you died, then the billboards wouldn't have had much impact, would they?
Yeah, so she's not afraid to speak her mind, is she, in
so
that situation where you wouldn't think it?
He's a loving family man, and I think of everyone here, he is easily the one to sympathise with. But to sort of counter that, he must have realised the full consequences of his actions, because he wrote out letters to everyone. Wrote out letters to Francis McDormand and to Sam Rockwell's character and to his wife before he blew his brains out. He committed suicide and left behind a loving wife and children. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a sad moment in the movie. I thought it was really, really sad when that happened. Because that character didn't deserve to go out that way.
No, he didn't.
But I suppose he did it because maybe it was the right thing, rather than putting his family through months of hell when he's going through chemo and whatever.
So, this is a deliberately awkward question. You sympathise with him committing suicide?
Yeah.
That's the thing, you see. That's what this movie does to you.
Yeah, it's a really horrible one to have to say that, but yeah, it does make you feel very awkward.
Yeah.
But with Sam Rockwell, by the way, I do want to say briefly that I've always been a big fan of him, and I will pretty much watch anything that he's in as and when I can. There are a lot of films I haven't seen of his, but I will try and check them out. But do you think that this really has the potential to thrust him into the limelight as a Hollywood A-lister that he deserves? Because a lot of the time he's often been the side character or the third or fourth billing.
He has had that sort of career, hasn't he?
Because I remember Welcome to Collingwood, wasn't it? Yeah.
I mean, Moon, the Duncan Jones movie, springs to mind, where he's the lead character, but even then he's spoilers, he's a clone, so he has to share the screen time with lots of other hymns. But yeah. To answer your question, I can only say, let's see what offers he gets. Because
he definitely deserves it now, and now it's going to be that any movie that hires him is going to take advantage of this Academy Award winner
I'll plaster that everywhere, yeah.
Yes, you're going to see that on any movie that Francis McDormand and Sam Rockwell are going to do in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
And yeah, but can you believe that this movie only cost $15 million to make? 15. That's cheap.
It's in a small town. It's a small town setting with a small town location, and it's a very intimate character piece.
But the actors involved, that must require a lot of budget, unless they all took scale,
or a bit of faith in the film that they were approached with. Yeah.
Well, it took a lot of money. I mean, it took nearly $160 million US in America alone. So it's done superb business. And I think it's a movie that's worthy of being seen, definitely. Whether or not it's something you can see yourself watching again and again, I don't know. I mean, I kind of think that the one viewing has done enough for me.
You feel it's one of those movies about nasty subject matter that you can't bring yourself to watch again? Is that?
I call that the Schindler's List situation.
Is this a Schindler's List for you then?
I think so. I think a great movie, but once you've seen it, you don't need to see it again. Yeah,
I'm not quite there. I might need to watch it again to reassess my favourite list of the year coming up. Hint, hint. But it's not just that, but just to catch if there are any jokes or nuances in the characters or performances that I missed before. I feel it's that strong enough of a movie. Certainly watching this again for the purposes of this video, maybe reassess the ending, which I felt badly about when I saw it at the cinema. Because, going into details, Dixon redeems himself by catching DNA off a guy he heard in the pub. He bragged about, I was here a few months previously and I raped a girl. So this must be the guy. So he scratches the face in a bid to get some DNA. So it looks like, we're going to solve the mystery now. But the new chief of police says it's not the guy. He was on duty, so the superior officers told me he was on duty, so he can't have been in town. So there's a kind of deflated feeling there. But Dixon says to Mildred, he may not be the killer. I'm sorry, but I think he is a killer. Let's go and kill him. It will make us feel better. And they get in the car and they drive off and they say to themselves, you know what, I don't know if we're going to do anything, if we're going to kill him when we get there. Let's just keep driving and see when we get there. And then the movie ends.
Yeah, it's a weird ending because you look at it and you just think these two have really been at each other's heads throughout the whole movie.
Well, that feels like a resolution at least. Of they hated each other, now they've been brought together by... They're both changed as people. Mildred's learned not to be, not to lash out at everyone, and Dixon was, I don't know if he's not racist anymore, but he's learned to be a better police officer.
But it makes me look at that ending and just think, I want to see what happens now. I want to see where they're going, if they're going on like a vigilante spree, a bit like a Death Wish type.
It is. It seems precisely calculated to leave you hanging about, again, the nature of revenge. Will they feel compelled to carry it out, or will they decide that revenge is fruitless?
I think it has to be up there with one of those endings, a bit like, I suppose, could we call it the Italian Job scenario, in which basically the ending is left on a cliffhanger to the point that it's up to you, the viewer, to decide where the characters are going to go and where you're going to invest the time with. Because I think if they were to make a follow-up to this, I don't think it will work. I think it's best to end it as it is.
Yeah, I don't think that was...
Carry on the story, of Mildred and Dixon.
I don't think that was the intention, but fair enough for thinking that way. I remember being frustrated because I already felt that the movie, if it's a bit of a long movie, was already petering out of steam by the end, and it ends on it's not the killer, but we have to resolve this somehow. But somebody pointed this out on the internet, and it did get me thinking about the chief of police saying that the superior officer said that it's not the guy. Does he believe this himself, or is he repeating instructions? There's still ambiguity there.
because you got them. We didn't mention it earlier, but when the Woody Harrelson character kills himself, he has a new. They have a new chief who's in, and he's a coloured guy,
and he's black, so obviously Dixon doesn't get on with him.
No, because he happens to throw the newspaper guy out the window, and then comes down the stairs and sees the black guy there, and he's like, "What the fuck are you looking at?" You know, and then he's like, "Who the hell's this guy?" He's like, "I thought I told you to go away." He goes, "I'm the chief of police or whatever," and it's like, okay, and he's the only one that doesn't really react in the way that most of you would go, like.
Oh no, I made a mistake.
He accepts it, and hence why he's put on suspension. But yeah, it's a funny movie. It is really funny. The poster doesn't give you any clues as to what the tone of it is. I'd say you look at it and you think, oh, it's going to be a serious drama, but it does have humour in it. Yeah. Even though it's a pretty horrible subject to talk about, but. From what I've heard, reading online, it does say that apparently Martin McDonagh, who wrote and directed this movie, apparently he was inspired by a real story that this actually is based on, partially. Apparently, he said that he based it on a couple of actual billboards that he did see about an unresolved crime in the late 1990s. Yeah. In the southern United States.
And I'll throw this out there, even though I can't corroborate it. I do distinctly remember walking across a bridge to my job a couple of months after this movie came out. I think this was in reaction to the Grenfell Tower being caught on fire and lots of people dying, and the perceived public reaction that the government or the local council weren't reacting quick enough to investigate this. And it was 3 billboards on a truck driving across the bridge saying, why haven't you reacted quicker to this? And that was the moment where I felt this movie has officially struck a chord with people.
You'll be telling me next that the billboards will eventually have hashtags on them to do something like that, but no doubt this movie wasn't that, far into the future, because the way it kind of looks like such a small town that it kind of looks like it could be based in any sort of period. It doesn't really feel like it's modern because of the lack of use of technology, really. There's not a lot of use of it.
Well, if we did do that, then I would say within the last decade, maybe 2 decades, but that's about it. Yeah, yeah.
So maybe that's what it is, I guess. So, you really like 3 billboards?
Absolutely.
Good. I thought it was good too, so I suppose we've got that in common, so that's really good. So, thank you very much for... Uh-oh.
What is that?
Yeah.
I think I know what that is.
Yeah, it's the spinner wheel.
Okay then, let's do this then, shall we?
Yes, let's do the twister spinner.
We have landed on...
Thriller.
Oh yeah, that's what that is.
It's Thriller. Sorry you couldn't see it. It's Thriller. Yeah. So Thriller, the movie it landed on for Thriller is Get Out.
Get Out.
Yeah. Not Get to the Chopper. It's Get Out. Another recent movie in this era of the Me Too and racism and everything like that. This film really is probably the perfect movie to come out at that sort of time. Would you say?
I'd say we will get into this, but it is. I think its success owes a lot to being very socially relevant.
Yes. So that's coming up on the next episode of What Did You Think? So thank you, Andrew, and being part of this.
You're welcome.
And don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out all the links in the video for the official Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course Patreon, which hopefully will be up and running soon with you guys' help. So thank you very much to all of you. So from both of us, it's a goodbye. So all the best.